Welcome back to Truth No Chaser, real talk for real people.
Even when it burns.
It's your girl Ashley.
And Jay.
And Frank.
And we have a lovely guest, Miss Latise Egeston.
Yes,
welcome to the show.
Welcome.
It's
Yes,
so
welcome,
good
Miss
to
Latise.
be
Queen.
Yes.
Love y'all.
And
Awesome
Thank you
thus
so
far,
much.
yes. Mm-hmm.
We had to have you back for No Chaser portion because Frankie has questions he comes up with all the time. And this one definitely was a deep question. Wasn't
All
surface. So, you know, we didn't want to just talk amongst ourselves with it because we don't have experience. We don't have the knowledge, I should say. So, Frankie, kick off the question.
All right.
Yes. So my question, you know, being that you are a therapist, my question is for those people who deal with the silence that surrounds molestation within the black family.
Yeah.
You know, as I spoke to you off camera, you know, the older I get, the more I realize there are a ton of friends, childhood friends that I grew up with that deal with that particular situation, being molested by a family member, and their family members keeping it behind closed doors, not really wanting to speak on it, so on and so forth. So I said you were the perfect person to talk to about this. What is I guess your take on it, or you know, and how people can probably maybe can help somebody deal with what it is that they're going through.
You know, when you talk about molestation and sexual abuse, I use the analogy of having a mirror, and you can see yourself in the mirror perfectly before the abuse. But sexual abuse and molestation is like a shattered mirror. And all the pieces are there, but it's broken. So when you see yourself, you see yourself, you know it's you, but it's distorted. The image is distorted.
Okay.
Because it is really confusing, particularly to a young person, when these things are happening and you don't really know why. And I think silence, abuse, whatever abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, spiritual abuse, that happens in secret. Okay. So the fundamental rule factor is the secrecy around that, because that's where the perpetrator can continue the behavior. So the silence, I think there are a couple of pieces, particularly in the African American community. You know, I think we have, as African Americans, we talked in the other segment about kind of our history and that we have been a people that have moved through all of these incredible challenges and tragedies as a people. And so we have a tendency to insulate ourselves with each other. So if, you know, I can't really get you in trouble because the world out there is worse than the world within ourselves. And so I'm probably, you know, that whole snitch mentality. Snitches get stitches. And well, that's I think a little bigger than the snitch we typically think about. Because we insulate typically ourselves from the outside world. So we just kind of handle things ourselves, or we don't. Because A, we don't know how, or we just try to do things that don't really fix the problem, like holding that person accountable. If they're doing that behavior, something's wrong with them, right? But we won't really address that because oftentimes the resources aren't available to us. The shame. Now let's put a pin there. The shame is so significant. I think also as a group of people that when you feel like you're always trying to prove yourself or be good enough, there's this tendency to want to present a facade. And so if you have this facade, if you think about our families you grew up in, and people that you know, it would be a horrible embarrassment for somebody that you know to have perpetrated these things on someone so innocent. And so oftentimes there is a tendency to silence the victim and ignore the perpetrator. And I think a lot of that has to do with again kind of keeping it enclosed because you want to protect, because you don't trust the outside world. But then the other piece is that the shame is so significant, so we just don't talk about it. And we also, let me add this too, and this is just a PSA, we have to equip our kids.
Right.
A lot of children who and even young adults, and these are boys and girls, these are not just girls, boys are also molested and sexually assaulted at a lower rate, but still a very high rate. So we have to equip our kids with information. A lot of children who are molested didn't know what was happening because they just didn't have the information, because it's something else we can be silent about and we don't talk about. So when we talk to our kids as young as 3, as young as they can understand it, where their private parts are, what the real names. You ain't got a wee-wee. You don't call your leg a different name. It's part of your body. So we can give them the real names for even their private parts, so we can talk about it, and it's not shame around that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of shame in talking about sex and sexuality. And I think we empower people, particularly our kids, better when we can have honest, open conversation about it.
Honesty.
Yeah.
I like that part.
Yeah. And that's deep, like you said, just with the initiative, because that was going to be my next question, was what would be your message really to those that go so far to conceal it? But you answered it, what I'm saying, they're ashamed of what people may think about their family, what people may think about that particular family member, so and it's just an uncomfortable conversation to have, but a conversation needs to be had.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was weird about me when I was victimized. My abuser made it a secret in the moment, and it wasn't a continual thing. It was like it was supposed to be a secret thing that we were doing, and I kept the secret no matter how old I got, as if I was still that little boy.
Yeah.
So it wasn't about family shame for me. Even as a grown man, I felt like I was keeping the childhood secret, like it was naughty to tell. And then when I did finally share, what was crazy was my mother was the first person I told, and it was like a good almost 20 years later. But when I told her, I swore her to secrecy.
Yeah.
So I was the initiator of making it a family secret.
Yeah.
I still wanted it to be a family secret.
Yeah.
Even.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
That is a bravery that I wish more brothers had, because I think when you talk about the secrecy, it's hard to not feel like in some way you're responsible. 1, 2, it's hard to not feel like you need to be responsible for your perpetrator and for your family. So that's another thing. You're put in a position to be protective of the family by not outing this secret and not shaming the family and not hurting the perpetrator, because a part of you could also really love the perpetrator too. There's multi-layers to a person. And so that's what's so confusing though, Jay. And that's what makes it so hard to know what to do.
I think I just didn't want it to be no family mess.
Yeah, well, exactly. But that's exactly right. And in some ways, you would be responsible, which is, of course, not the case.
I wanted to tell you, but I don't want it to be no.
Absolutely.
I made it this long. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be okay.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Which is bad.
Oh, wait a minute. Didn't we talk about that before?
Huh?
That sounds like a judgment.
I mean,
it's not
because
good or bad. It just is.
I think well, the goods, like, I was able to share just now.
Yeah.
Because I started sharing and then through therapy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it
That's good.
every time I share, like I said in the last segment, I got the tattoo liberation on my arm because sharing was freedom.
Yes.
And every time I share, I get a little bit more free.
Yeah.
But not to be braggadocious, like, look what I went through. If I share, it encourages somebody else to share.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I just want other people to get a taste of freedom.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
when you were talking about, you said a lot of stuff. When you were just talking about it general in the opening, we talking about the shame, and you talked about having to put on a facade and making yourself feel so worthy. I think the biggest thing that messed me up and really messed up the lives of other people was one of the ways that I just understood the world to be, to, you know, make yourself feel worthy as a young man, was a lot of women.
Yeah.
So, you know, until you become free, that bondage to your family and yourself is the gift that keeps on giving.
Right.
The bad gift that keeps on giving.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of those generational pieces that, because of what the decisions you've made and the work you've done, that your children are going to be better for it.
Amen.
You know, they're going to be healthier because they've got a dad who was able to really face some things that other people couldn't face for whatever the reason. For whatever the reason, they couldn't face those things. But their dad did. And so there's going to be a difference in this particular generation. Because if you didn't do that work, and if you didn't fight for that, because it's a fight for that liberation. You didn't fight for that. You weren't going to be able to be the husband, to be the father, and even be the son that you needed to be, because all of those, remember that mirror?
Yep.
That mirror is it's a jagged, distorted perception of who you are. And that's what that kind of abuse does.
That's real, because that was something else that you said that hit home.
Yeah.
Every time you get a little bit more free, that mirror look a little better.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's not that it even looks better. You can stand it.
You can stand it. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
And you know, and we had to talk. That's the problem. If we don't talk about it, you know, the strong brother you are, sharing that is an incredible example, because you never know who, like Frankie talked about, you run across people, you never know anybody's story. So when they hear that and they like, wait a minute, what? We have no idea the power that does, that gives to someone else.
Yeah. And, you know, I thank my crew here, because, you know, it's funny when Frankie raised the topic, as he does. He's our content director of content, the Truth No Chaser LLC.
Come on, DC.
But when he raised the thing on our conference call, you know, free people.
Absolutely.
We always coin the term hurt people.
That's right.
But free people,
That's right.
These folks here, Tiffany, you can't see her if you're watching.
Yeah.
But Tiffany, Ashley, and Frankie, you know, we go at it. We family.
Yeah.
But they are free people. So when Frankie said, let's have this topic, I immediately spoke up, said, well, I'm going to have to put my big boy drawers on.
I love it.
As a victim of abuse. But I let them know right off the gate.
Yeah.
But that's because they were free from whatever things might have kept them from being free. They were free, so they created a comfortable space for me to be free.
Right.
And that's what I want to do with others.
Absolutely.
I love it. And I want to just add one thing about shame. We all do things that we aren't proud of, right? And things happen to us in life that we have nothing to do with. We have no control over it. We didn't ask for it. It just happens. And sometimes that ain't right and it ain't fair. But shame has an expiration date.
Amen.
Shame, if you go to the grocery store and you keep something long beyond its expiration date, what happens? It spoils. If you ingest it, what happens?
Makes you sick.
You get sick.
Absolutely.
So what we have a tendency to do is we have our own shame and then we hold on to other people's shame too.
Come on now.
And it's long beyond the expiration date. Shame can teach us something. Guilt can teach us something. But when you hold, and shame and guilt are first cousins. They are very closely related. And so, but when you hold on to that for a significant amount of time, you are taking it in and it makes you sick. So we gotta be, but before we can get rid of the shame and guilt, we gotta confront it.
Amen.
You can't change what you won't confront, right? You can't change that.
That's the truth.
Right? Now, I didn't say that. Auntie Jan Levon's aunt says that all the time. But it's true. You cannot, I was saying it, but I'm going to give her credit. But you can't change what you won't confront. And that's why silence is so dangerous. That's why secrets are so dangerous. So even when you're talking to young people about secrets, we're going to keep this secret, be mindful even in how you do that. You know, they're good secrets. There's some secret. If it makes you feel funny, baby, that's a bad secret. That's not a good secret. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's
Get
so
rid
true.
of that guilt. It
That's
is
so true.
expired. Get rid of it.
And that keeps us, the shame you just mentioned, keeps us in bondage.
Oh my God, yes.
And as Jay said, free people. My thing was, you're right, hurt people. And it wasn't until therapy that I was able again to find that freedom. I'm still on that journey to find that, but it is liberating once you're able to speak up and confront it.
Yeah.
You know, you may not have asked for it, but it happened.
Right.
And in order to get past it or heal from it, you have to acknowledge it. So that is very key. That is very key, because shame will keep you, no matter how old you are, you're still that little person that was damaged.
Right. And I love that you said that, because we all have an inner child. And there are things that come up that when we're communicating, really it's not you at your 30, 40, whatever age you is. It is that baby that was abandoned, that was wounded, that wasn't heard, that wasn't supported. It's that child that's speaking. And that's what's important in your relationships too, because that's what the voice that comes up a lot in the relationships that are most intimate, that we're most intimate in. Sometimes it's that inner boy, that inner girl that comes out.
So I want to share something.
Yeah.
Healing wise, but I'm no therapist. So as I share,
Are you?
I want you to
I
come.
don't know.
Well, I haven't been licensed by anybody, so
Okay,
there's a strong
all right.
chance of malpractice.
Okay. All right. I'm
So
just
I want you to come behind me and correct any of my perspective that is factually or medically or professionally incorrect.
Yeah. Okay.
But what I've learned on the path of healing is intentionality. You can't look in the mirror and say, okay, I'm going to be different. I'm going to overcome this thing today. You can. But after you make that decision, what comes is a bunch of tiny decisions after that.
Yes.
And those tiny decisions, and then you have to make a commitment to making those tiny decisions
Right.
every day. And eventually those things become habitual.
Right.
And then those habits build a new character.
Absolutely.
And then, so now you've manifested the blessing that you gave yourself in the mirror. You said, I'm free.
Right.
And then you've walked in that freedom. And then you've committed to walking in that freedom. And then next you know, you're living freely, intentionally. If I've said anything, that's my path. If I say anything that is wrong, please.
No.
folks right.
You. Everybody's path is different, but what you're saying is spot on. it has to start with intentionality. And we don't get where we at overnight. So
Right.
how we think we're going to fix it overnight? It's a process. And I think that's what gets really difficult for people and discouraging, because it doesn't happen that, like that. We want to be free of it. We want to not feel the challenge of it, but there's work that comes with it, and that's purposeful work though. There's something in that work that has to be done so you can get the full benefit of it. And my dad used to always say, baby, you gonna really appreciate something when you work for it. And that used to get on my nerves, because that's some daddies always say to, when you ain't trying to do. But isn't that the truth? When you really work at something and you arrive at it, you appreciate it in such a different way. That's what I hear you saying with the journey. It's little bitty steps. It's little bitty intentions. Sometimes it's big intentions. It's how you think about things. How will you choose to think differently now that you have this information that's different than what you had before, right? Don't ever underestimate the power of intention, ever. There is the world changes because of intention, right? Don't ever underestimate the power of that.
Right.
You just said something so key that spoke to me, and I don't want to get too deep. But just being transparent, you said that, if you don't deal with that trauma or that hurt as that young boy or girl, it'll come up again in relationships. And I think, and not stop saying I think, I know until I was able to start dealing with my childhood trauma, that it resurfaced in relationships over and over again. And I could say, like Jay said, I'm gonna change, I'm gonna do something different. But if I was intentional about doing it, I repeat the same thing over and over again. So you have to deal with that childhood trauma.
And you don't know what you don't know. I mean, you don't. Again, here we go. Sometimes we think we should.
Exactly.
We look at our behaviors and say, I should just, well, how are you supposed to just know that? You don't know what you don't know. And that's the beauty of really being honest with yourself and having the courage to just be open. Yeah.
Woo! I thought I had a therapy session, y'all. I can go on all day long with her. I'm trying to tell you, like, she be helping me get my life.
What's my copay?
Right?
Yeah, I'm going to holler at you after. Let me know.
But before we get out of here,
Yeah.
somebody may be watching that I said last segment that may have dealt with the molestation in their family, in their home, and they're hurting in silence.
Yeah.
What kind of advice do you have for them? What kind of words of encouragement do you have that somebody can say, you know what, I gotta do something different?
So again, I think it goes back to being courageous enough to be honest with yourself about what you need, and being intentional and loving yourself enough to be committed to giving yourself what you need.
Yes.
Love, because that goes back to really loving yourself, which is not always easy. Sometimes we think we love ourselves, but we do things that don't love ourselves.
Amen.
And so if we can have the courage to be honest with ourselves, we can have the courage to be honest with others and walk with intention to be our best selves. And you don't have to do it by yourself. You're not supposed to.
Amen.
Yeah.
So and before I forget, you had mentioned off camera again about the holidays coming up.
Yeah.
So I'm happy I actually asked that question, because the same advice can be given for a person that may be sitting around a family member that they've experienced this with and stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
like
it happens all the time. Yeah.
How people dealing with and coping with and being forced to deal with and cope with a loved one, someone that they would consider a loved one. And so it's very deep, that what you had just mentioned there. So any, I guess, lasting?
So I think as you become more self-aware, things that were once familiar become more obvious. And so I think it's just important to get support out the gate, to really get some support. So we talked about perspective. So you can have someone walking with you to give you information, increase your awareness and insight, but to help you and support you in making the best decisions for whatever boundaries you need to set for yourself, for whatever confrontations, if any, that you need to make. But whatever it is that you need to do to seek your healing, that you really make a commitment to that and find support in getting that. And the holidays are big triggers in a lot of ways for that, because we typically are around family. Now we may not be because of everything, but there's still a lot of connection and a lot of opportunities to do that. And again, it goes back to being silent when you don't truly advocate for yourself. So you're the only one around the turkey feeling uncomfortable and weird, and you stuff it because that's what you're used to, because that's what you're rolling. It doesn't have to be that way. It could be different. And so really being intentional, there's that word again, to get the support you need so you can make decisions that work and are healthy for you.
And how, given your question, Jay?
I was going to extend the conversation. Never mind. So I learned on a slightly lighter note. I learned a new term this year in 2020, coming into the fall.
Okay.
Never heard of it.
I want to hear.
Knew that it was real. Found out it was real.
Okay.
Thought a friend was just making it up.
Okay.
I might say it wrong, like seasonal depression disorder.
Seasonal affective disorder.
SAD. It's the acronym, seasonal affective disorder. You ever heard of that?
No, never heard of it.
It's when going in the fall and the winter, when it starts getting darker and colder, people get depressed because there's not as much sunlight like in the summertime, right?
That's right. Ding, 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 ding.
And it actually affects like the chemical imbalance too.
Absolutely. You're absolutely. That's a real seasonal affective disorder. And so people, you said it right. All of that's exactly right. There are people that their depression is significant during that time, or even can be during, when it's rainy and stormy and overcast. But it is a real thing during those fall and winter months. Less daylight, colder temperatures, it shifts their physiological responses, and they are more likely to be depressed.
I learned a couple of people that actually have it.
Oh,
My sister.
Yeah.
I didn't even know.
Wow.
Boom! Look at you with your vocabulary.
Wikipedia. Just wondered.
I'm just saying.
I like the fall. I get to put on them layers, mix up them earth tones, accessories.
I love it.
So yes.
Well, before we get up out of here, how can people find you again, please?
Yes, it is Mosaics. Oh wait, excuse me. Hold on one. There you go. Okay. MosaicsCounseling.com. MOSAICS counseling.com.
We want to thank you so incredibly much for coming by. You are awesome, and I'm not just saying it because I love you.
I love you
but
too.
You genuinely, I'm always captivated by how you talk. It's just your voice alone, your tone is so soothing. So I'm in awe right now. I'm a fan. I'm a fan.
Absolutely, and for all our listeners out there, I'm happy that we were able to discuss this.
Yes.
Just know that we're all shoulders.
Absolutely.
That's good.
Trouble
Frankie.
lasts, but not always.
That's right. That's right.
So
yeah, that's good.
You're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I want to thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Before you guys started getting all Michael Jackson on us, but we want to thank. I want to personally thank you for being so transparent and vulnerable, because now everybody gets to see that side of you. And I just pretty much learned, more into your story. So I am appreciative of you allowing us into your space and feeling safe enough to open up to TNC and our audience out there as well.
Thank you.
That's bold.
That's
and for being
takes courage.
And for being a constant team player, man. Because
absolutely.
The moment I mentioned this, he could have, he said I got to put my big boy pants on. But he said, I don't want to talk about that, y'all.
Right.
You know, and I would respect it.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I knew you would have. This just goes back to the comfortable space. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, shout out to God for planting the seed. And listen, y'all, shout out to EAP, Employee Assistance Program.
Yeah.
Pays
say
for
that
your
twice.
first, usually 3 to 4 sessions of
say that.
therapy,
That's
and
right.
they get you hooked, they get you up in there. So
That's
if you're
right.
like, I don't know if I want to spend money on that, use your job's money
Right.
and get up in that thing. For real.
Right.
That's
And there
what
are
got me
other
started.
resources that have reduced fees. You know, there are opportunities. There are churches. Ray of Hope has a Keys of Hope counseling
Sure
ministry
do.
that's free. You know, there are churches that provide that for free, lay counseling and sometimes professional. So it's resources.
Yes.
Go find you somebody.
Don't
the
be
therapists
embarrassed.
need
Yes.
therapists. So take care of yourselves. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm saying.
Do not be embarrassed. Do not feel this shame. Let that go. In 2020, after that hell of a year we had, let all that go.
Yeah.
Let all that get liberated.
Yeah. You lose nothing. You lose
Absolutely.
nothing. You only gain.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you again, Latise.
Love
we will have you
y'all.
back on the show for
Yeah,
sure.
Love y'all. Thank you so much.
Love you back.
Love you back.
All right, y'all. Go look her up because she is the bomb.
She is.
Until next time, be safe,
Yeah.
be smart,
Peace.
and lose that shame.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
For real.
Peace.
Thank you for watching this very special episode of Truth No Chaser. If you or someone you know has been affected by sexual abuse, we encourage you to speak to a professional for support and advice. God bless.
Truth. No chaser.